Welcome everyone to the Hurting Humanity channel. Everybody out there at this point, unless they're living under a boulder, has heard these stories about mysterious fog showing up in the UK, in America, in Canada, and if you haven't heard, it's even showing up in China, which is very important to note. This is not an isolated incident where you wake up in the morning and you're preparing to go to work and there's a fog outside, a fog that could be explained away by moist air moving over a colder surface, which cools the air near the surface below its dew point, thus creating a fog. This is not normal. And of course, the only thing we hear from the media, the only peep that we hear is them trying to explain to us why suddenly it is normal in the middle of December into early January to see fog around the earth. They're calling it anticlyconic gloom. They're trying to explain it away as a scientific phenomena. What we're clearly seeing is one of two things. This fog is either a bioweapon, a real actual bioweapon, which I'll get into more detail about what's going on in China, or we are seeing them literally dumping smart dust on us. Now, people believe that smart dust has been dumped on us already. I don't deny that. I do believe that there is smart dust particles in these chemtrails, along with aluminum and barium that is getting sprayed on us every single day. But I'm talking about a large-scale smart dust bath occurring around the entire Earth at the same time. It's one of those two things, because this is not something that is a weird phenomenon that's occurring, especially since we're seeing it around the Earth. Now, all the stories out there in America are talking about, even in some places, they're having snow and fog at the same time. This thick fog that is sweeping across the U.S. also is being reported of having a burning chemical smell. So people are reporting that this fog smells, that this is, have you ever gone outside when there's actual fog and smelled anything other than maybe the grass and morning dew? No, you haven't. People are reporting that they're smelling chemicals. One person said, quote, "I got very warm and I felt like I had a fever and my stomach was cramping." Parts of Texas, Wisconsin, Iowa, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, North Dakota, Florida, and Minnesota were under fog alerts when the bizarre reports surfaced this week. It's already been now documented that it's in San Diego, it's in California, it is popping up everywhere. And of course, when things like this happen and you notice these things happening, they immediately go into deflection mode. And all these articles out there about the fog, of course, have to put the word conspiracy theory in there to make the sheeple out there automatically dismiss this bizarre weather phenomenon, because they've been trained to think that anything attached to the word conspiracy theory is some crazy type of notion that these MAGA people are coming up with. They've completely stereotyped the word conspiracy theory when in fact, these are conspiracy facts. People should be looking at these things and this bizarre behavior that we're seeing around us, these bizarre anomalies that are occurring, and questioning them. But they're not, because of mind control and behavioral control tactics that the government is using, like creating words like conspiracy theory to make them automatically dismiss these things. So the interesting thing to note here is that a week and a half ago in China, as they were heading into the new year, lots of fog was being reported, even heading into the last couple of days. Fog and haze in China as New Year travelers brace for potential disruption. But the key to that story isn't that people are worried that their flights might get delayed. The key to that story is that fog appeared in China at the same exact time as we're now suddenly hearing about this HMPV virus. China faces COVID-like virus outbreak. Can HMPV spread to India? Here's what experts say. All around the earth right now, they are reporting stories about this HMPV virus and lockdowns occurring in China. Is that a coincidence? Of course not. Now, the difference between this and what occurred in 2020 with China, with Corona, with what came after the fact, including what came after Event 201, is that that was psychological. That was a psychological operation. And the virus didn't go live until people, sheeple, because they were so scared, went and put something they didn't know inside of their body and then began shedding it onto other civilians, because that's how it actually went live. There was no fog before any of that occurred because there was no bioweapon in the sky. This time around, this is exactly what we could see. We could see a fog occurring around us that nobody's paying attention to, while not only is China having this HMPV outbreak and lockdown, in America, they're suddenly telling us that there is a spike in norovirus. And they're creating panic and fear over the norovirus, which I believe is nothing more than a stomach flu. But look at all the stories out there about the norovirus. USA Today, Newsweek, NBC, ABC, NPR, all of them talking about norovirus outbreaks at the same time that America is under this dust cloud. And maybe it's not a bioweapon. Maybe it's something else, like I mentioned in previous videos about the smart dust, because people are getting imagery of this fog where you can see that it almost looks like it's snowing, but it's not snowing. These are pictures we're seeing coming out of California, out of Florida, out of places where there's no snow on the ground. There's no precipitation whatsoever. When you turn the flashlight off, there's no flurries occurring. There's just fog. And when they shine light on this fog, what they're seeing is what looks like small grains of rice. And of course, since people are putting this up on their Instagrams, their YouTubes, their Twitters, their TikToks, the mainstream media has to cover this because they need to explain it away. So suddenly, in the history of humankind, I don't recall ever shining a light on fog and seeing particles. I don't think anybody does. But the mainstream media is telling you that shining a light in the fog makes these particles visible. As for the chemical smell people have described, fog can absorb and trap polluted air near the Earth's surface, acting as a carrier for car exhaust, industrial emissions, and other airborne chemicals. In other words, bullcrap, right? Because that's what that is. That's them giving an excuse that makes zero sense. They know that the sheeple, all they need to do is hear something from what they deem as a credible news source like Newsweek or the USA Today, and they'll automatically dismiss it because they gave them a reason right there, even if the example makes zero sense because nobody has ever smelt chemicals in fog before. Nor have people shined flashlights on fog and seen chemicals, what looks like chemical dust in the fog, which brings me again back to the smart dust. NASA, DARPA, documented proof that smart dust exists. They tell you the purpose of smart dust and what they're trying to do with smart dust. Let me show you here, for those of you that haven't seen, what smart dust is.
Every square inch of every city will be alive with intelligence. Every building will have a network of microcomputers built right into them. Smart dust. These all-in-one microcomputers will be small.
The size of a mote today is about the size of a grain of rice. That eventually it will be possible to make things that are on a sub-millimeter size scale.
Tiny specks of computer smart dust will form a vast invisible network to help manage the infrastructure of even the largest city.
And basically distribute it everywhere.
These tiny computers record information about their surroundings, information they can send to other computers or to you. Smart dust will also allow buildings and streets to recognize you and respond accordingly.
The city will know where you are.
Your workplace will know you. Smart dust at the entrance will boot up your computer, and smart dust embedded in the elevator doors will automatically ring your floor.
Smart dust, and the new technology may soon make it possible to keep track of anything, anywhere, including you.
Smart dust originated with DARPA back in the 90s. This powder-sized chip is something called the Mu chip from Hitachi. It's the smallest commercially available RFID system in the world. You can literally scatter this stuff like dust or embed it into a sheet of paper. It doesn't require a battery. Flecks of computing power settling on your skin, ingested, monitoring you inside and out.
The nanoparticles are designed to go under the radar of the immune system, and so they are undetected in the body.
We have computing everywhere, we have connectivity everywhere, we have infrastructure that can compute those with new capabilities like AI.
If you have enough data and you have enough computing power, you can understand people better than they understand themselves, and then you can manipulate them in ways which were previously impossible.
Transhumanism is a growing movement that aims to use technology to modify our bodies, sometimes in radical ways to make them stronger, faster, and better.
So this very well could be a massive layering of smart dust going on. I know there's people out there that say, well, they don't believe that it's smart dust because they already spray us with smart dust. I'm talking about smart dust on a massive scale. I'm talking about extra layers of smart dust like you would not normally get from chemtrailing, where it is visible because there's so much being dumped. Now, you might want to ask the question of, well, if it's smart dust, why are people reportedly smelling something? Why are people reportedly feeling ill? Well, if you suddenly took a bath inside of dust, which was really just little computer chips smaller than the size of rice, because as you heard in that clip, they're way beyond having the smart dust the size of a grain of rice. It's way smaller than that at this point. That's an older clip. So people could obviously be having reactions to the smart dust being absorbed in their bodies, on their flesh, breathing it in through their nose, making them sick. What they're calling norovirus, what they could be calling over in China HMPV, which also could indicate by them naming HMPV in China and then in America, while both are under fog, saying norovirus in one place, HMPV in another, because the plan might not be to announce a massive outbreak like we just had 4 years ago. The plan might just be, oh, you're feeling sick because of, this is what's going around right now. It's January, it's cold, people get colds, that's all, no big deal. Anybody out there reporting anything different to conspiracy theorists? So they may just be reporting on these other outbreaks just as a cover for people who are having ill effects from this smart dust, who are ingesting this smart dust, who are obviously covered in this smart dust, but can't see it on their actual body and can't see that they're actually breathing it in. But if you shine a flashlight on it at 12 o'clock at night, you could see around you that it's not snowing. So what are you looking at here? I mean, were you in a forest fire? Are these people taking footage from inside a forest fire where you see, dust floating around and ashes, I should say, floating around in the middle of the night after a forest fire? Oh, no, they're not. They're standing on their front porch in suburbia where there's no signs of anything around them except this fog that they're sitting in. And when they turn a flashlight on, they're suddenly seeing what looks like flurries inside of this, fog. And the mainstream media, when they ask questions, is saying it's normal. And they go, well, what about the smell? Oh, that's normal too. Well, what about my stomach ache? Oh, well, that could be the norovirus or maybe HMPV if you're in China. And don't forget that this is also going on in the UK. That's where it started first. The UK has been sitting in fog for weeks. And like I said earlier, they try to explain it away as a anti-cyclonic gloom, some strange weather phenomenon that they just made up. Because remember, they own the science. They let us know that at the World Economic Forum, which means they make it up as they go.
We partnered with Google, for example. If you Google climate change, you will, at the top of your search, you will get all kinds of UN resources. We started this partnership when we were shocked to see that when we Googled climate change, we were getting incredibly distorted information right at the top. So we're becoming much more proactive. We own the science and we think that the world, should know it. And we own the science and we think that the world, should know it. And we own the science.
And I also had mentioned in another video, don't forget the predictive programming with stuff like this. Don't forget The Mist, The Fog, John Carpenter, Stephen King. There's lots of movies that are about weird fog showing up and sitting over towns and weird disturbances happening and people getting mysteriously sick and ill. And remember the correlation, because the plot of The Mist happens to be after a powerful storm damages their main home, David Dayton and his young son head into a town together to gather food and supplies. Soon afterward, a thick fog rolls in and engulfs the town, trapping the Draytons and others in the grocery store. Terror mounts as deadly creatures reveal themselves outside. But that may be nothing compared to the threat within, where a zealot calls for a sacrifice. Not only do you have sacrifice in the plot, of course, from Stephen King, who one of the main themes of his films is sacrifice, as well as another act, which is the real ending of the book It, which you can find on my website, which 99% of the population don't know how the book It ends. Because the movie doesn't end that way when a bunch of kids decide to get together and, what's the word I would use? Partake in an act that is unimaginable with one another. Right? Ends with the word, starts with the letter O and ends with the G. Okay? And of course, Stephen King, all you have to do is look at Stephen King to know his involvement. Stephen King isn't a masterful writer. He writes these things out. These novels, these movie scripts, these are not works of art. So That plot right there, think about that. With everything I've talked about with microchips and nanotechnology and Gordy Rose, those clips that you've all seen where Gordy Rose talks about these little tiny chips that are like little demonic beings, right? That hate humanity, that look at us as ants. That's how they're describing quantum computing and what's coming in the future, right? Well, that's interesting that the plot of The Mist with this fog is about demons, literally terror mounts as deadly creatures reveal themselves outside, while people could potentially be getting covered with these microscopic nanotech microchips, right? Interesting. Nothing is a coincidence. So America under fog, the UK under fog, China under fog. What's happening in China? There's an outbreak in China. Are they locking people down? In some regions they are. And what's happening in America? Well, America is under fog alert, and at the same time, the norovirus, which is just a stomach bug, which could just be a reaction to smart dust or potentially a bioweapon. It is one of the two. There's something going on. This is not normal. This is not normal fog. They even admit that it's not normal fog because they have to explain things away. At first, they tell you that it's this ridiculous anticyclonic gloom. Then suddenly they start telling you how it is possible to have fog that smells and have fog in completely opposite, completely opposite of what science and nature tell us where fog could occur. Completely opposite environment fog's occurring. And of course, people filming this stuff and showing you what looks like flurries in their flashlight, they also explain that away by telling you things like, well, if you shine light on any fog, it'll make these particles visible. Oh, is that right? Of course, like I've always said, they claim to own the science, which means they make it up as they go. And if you critically think, all they need to do is put the stamp of Newsweek or USA Today or CNN on it, and the sheeple will believe it, even if it makes absolutely no sense. That's what we've seen over the last couple of years. Literally, we've had people who have injected themselves with poison, who have been told by the government, if you go and get it, everything will be over for you. You can go back and live your life the same way. Then they go and get it. Then the government tells them what? Well, about that. You're going to have to go every couple of months and get boosted. What? Yeah. Oh, and by the way, you're also not immune. You're going to get sick. Oh, and you're also going to get sick when you take this into your body. All those things are going to occur, but, you'll have a better chance of living than the people who don't get it. Oh, all right. That makes zero sense to anybody who has a brain. But of course, somehow the sheeple hear that. It goes in one ear, out the other, and they still line up to get poison injections. So go figure, right? The fog is spreading. Keep an eye on these stories about what's going on in China, as well as how they explain this norovirus at the same time this fog is happening. Like I said, either smart dust being sprayed in mass scale, or we could be seeing a potential bioweapon, which would be different than last time, because last time, again, it started with a psychosis. The flu became the virus. When people went and took in the actual virus, that was shedded onto other people, causing people to actually get ill and croak. And people, even who didn't have an injection, were getting sick, because you could look back at polio if you want the history of shedding. Of course, they won't deny that. They'll just deny that shedding was attached to that story because, well, they don't expect you to ask questions or to think. Time for people to wake up. There are no such things as coincidences. I thank everyone for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.